Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Well, that wasn't too shabby, was it? That was actually well worth the drive up to Burnley, which would it take me? It was about a 9-hour round trip. For once, a drive to Burnley was truly worth it in a football sense, rather than all the madness that normally ensues at Burnley. And do you know what? It's kind of felt like an attacking performance that's been coming. There's been a lot of good football, but maybe not just that clinical edge to it. And Spurs, Vincent Kompany admitted in his press conference afterwards that there was just times in that second half his team just couldn't compete with Spurs, just could not keep up with them, could not stop them from kind of carving them apart. And it was glorious. Sorry, Burnley, because, Burnley did a great job. Kompany's done a great job getting them up. I think it's going to be a tough season for them. But, he's a young, progressive, interesting coach, definitely. And they tried to play football. They tried to play it. That was the interesting thing, was that both sides really tried to play the ball out from the back constantly. But just Spurs did it better. And as soon as they broke through the press, that was it. There was just so much room behind. And obviously that's the danger of the system, is you've got to be prepared for teams getting in behind you if you try to press them high up the pitch. And Spurs, just did it better. But I think Kompany actually said that he studied Postecoglou quite a lot as well, which was quite interesting. Postecoglou certainly knew a lot about him as well ahead of the game. It's a strange start to the day because I had to drive up to Turf Moor because of the train strikes that have been going on. If you're from outside the UK and England, it's been a kind of a regular thing in recent months and probably the last year or so, isn't it? These train strikes have popped up here and there, and always seems to be when there's a big game that we've got to get to that's on the other end at the other end of the country. So long old drive up. I would say better than the last time, or one of the last times that I tried. People who watch these will know very well of my 6-hour drive up to Burnley in the snow. Sat-nav took me through these strange mountain passes. Honestly, I expect to see like goats wandering past the car and Sherpas and people like that. I was so high up. It was so snowy. Managed to finally get to Turf Moor. Skiddy roads, dangerous conditions. Pulled up. You have to park in there. There's a cricket club next door. They made us park in the bowl of the cricket ground, which was not great to getting out when the snow was there. Parked my car up. Pulled the handbrake up. Opened the door, got out, and some Spurs fan, nicely in a way, shouted across, "Ali, they've just called the match off. It's postponed." I swore very loudly, walked across into Turf Moor, used their toilet, got back in my car, and drove the 6 hours back home. That was not a good day, but this was totally different. This was totally different in every sense. There was. Sunshine. That was a start, not snow. Great football. Very different kind of game. Obviously, this wasn't a Sean Dyche Burnley. It was a very different kind of opponent. And I had this strange thing when I rocked up that I went in, put my bag into the media room. And then there's a little quirk of the layout of Turf Moor that when the coaches arrive with the players from both teams, they actually have to walk straight past the entrance to the media room. It's kind of an outdoor area. It's almost like a bit of a courtyard, not great description. It's kind of like a little mini courtyard. You've got the pitch and the stadium, and they have to come through this archway, and then they go off to the dressing room. So I thought to myself, you know what? I've got a little bit of time before the teams are announced. I'll pop out into the doorway, and then I'm able to see which players have travelled with the squad, the Spurs squad. So I saw the Burnley come through first, and I popped out to the doorway, saw the Spurs players come in, and some of them will obviously know me from, most of them will have had interviews, or I'll have interviewed them at some point. Whether they remember me is another thing. Not the most memorable face. Some of them obviously know this silly mug. So, people saying hello and stuff. Sonny's always lovely. And actually, Pierre Muhoibe is always very, very friendly. I don't know why, because I'm not always the most complimentary to him, but... probably has no idea. Probably has no idea who I am. It's just being polite. But what I ended up having to do, I don't know how it happened. I ended up having to kind of be their navigator because every one of them pretty much was coming in the under this archway and was just heading off in random directions. I had to kind of almost shepherd them to point towards where the dressing room entrance was. I don't think that would have appeared on telly anywhere. I hope not, because you've got this weird bloke standing in a doorway, like leaning against it, going, "It's that way, lads. It's that way. Yeah." Looking like a complete plonker, really. But yeah, you can see some of them are in the zone. Some of them had their earphones in and stuff like that, and little kind of groups of how they come in, who they're talking to. It's just that weird little kind of behind the scenes stuff that you don't kind of see if you're stuck inside the media room typing away. Saw various directors of the club come in as well. Not Daniel Levy. I didn't spot him. Presumably either he goes in a different entrance or maybe he wasn't there. I don't know. But I certainly saw a few of them. And I saw Scott Munn. Scott Munn. I have seen at pretty much every single Spurs game this season, pre-season or Premier League. I was obviously away for the Bournemouth and Fulham games, so I don't know whether he was there or not. But he, I could try to be smiley and quite polite to him when I saw him. I was like I wasn't kind of. I don't know if I was in that position to say hello, but I kind of just gave a smile. He gave me a proper glare as he walked by. It may have just been his natural kind of, or just his resting face. I don't know. He had earphones in as well, so he's probably in another place right then. But I kind of thought, I don't know. There was a part of me that thought, are you glaring at me because I've spotted you and you maybe really shouldn't be here? I don't know. It was really weird. But to be completely honest, he is the worst. If he is trying to kind of, how do I put this, be discreet and blend in and not be seen to be in, I don't want to say in the employment of Tottenham Hotspur because he clearly is not officially yet, but if he's trying to be discreet, if he's trying to be Scott undercover, he is failing miserably. I see him everywhere. I saw him at Spurs Stadium for the Man U game, having to kind of, they had to check all his IDs he was trying to get in and everything. And honestly, I'm sure I'm overreading it, reading too much into it. And he wasn't glaring at me because he thought, oh, rubbish, he's seen me. Oh no, that's really annoying. Or there's that bloke that keeps saying I'm here, there and everywhere at every game. Don't be there. You don't have to yet. We still don't entirely know when he's going to start. Postecoglou was asked actually on Friday in the written section right at the end of his press conference. And he was just like, I'm paraphrasing slightly because I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something like, oh, mate, as if I haven't got enough on my plate right now, kind of thing. As if to say he didn't really want to talk anything to do with the Scott Munn stuff. Because if you're not aware, Scott Munn should have started on July the 1st. We're now September the 3rd, and he certainly hadn't started as of when I saw him yesterday. We'll see when he gets permission. We don't know the exact reason why City are kind of holding it up from their end. Whether it's, I don't know, there's so many different reasons it could be. It could be financial. Could it be a little bit of a payback for the whole not being able to get Harry Kane in 2021? Could it be because, maybe Scott Munn has started to do some kind of stuff within Tottenham Hotspur. Obviously, maybe consultancy or being certainly asked his opinions on stuff, or maybe even more. Maybe they've found out and are not happy about that. I don't know. This is me purely speculating. I don't know. But obviously, him rocking up among the directors, I'm trying to remember if he was wearing a Spurs badge jacket or not. He was definitely wearing a navy kind of suit thing. I wouldn't want to go as far to say it had the Spurs badge on it because that would be quite symbolic and not a great look. So I'm not going to definitely say it was, but he did blend in with the other directors who were coming in. I saw Todd Klein come in. I saw Matthew Collicott as another one as well. They were the only three I saw actually. Although technically Scott Munn is not a director yet of Tottenham Hotspur. He will be Chief Football Officer at some point when that's all eventually ratified and completed. But I just thought that was a bit weird. But as talking of glaring people and not smiling, no, the other way. Talking of smiling people, there's a lot of smiles around Tottenham Hotspur right now, which is was like a world away from where we were. I had, funnily enough, my nephew, Michael, I'll name check him. I was having a long chat with him on the phone as I was driving back yesterday from the game. And one of the things he asked me was about how, obviously, because he's a Spurs fan, he's got a season ticket. I obviously grew up a Spurs fan. I had no choice. It was the family thing. And he asked me, do you kind of regret covering Spurs? Has it kind of made you less of a fan? And, it's something people have asked me kind of over the years. And it's quite interesting. I kind of realised yesterday, I think, that during the kind of rubbish recent years, I think I've probably separated even more from the fan side of things in terms of having to see. I always have to be as objective as I can anyway. And hopefully I am. I'm balanced. I try not to go too much in one direction or the other because I know there's so many different sides to everything. And obviously seeing behind the curtain of how things works probably opens your eyes up to quite a bit as well. But I did feel that, especially during the times when it was really bleak under Conte, under Mourinho, when the football became really, really poor. There were some games under Mourinho it wasn't poor, but there were a fair few. It was just, ugh. And then, of course, the Nuno years. I do think I probably separated more from that fan enjoyment side of it all. Whereas I think it's early days, but I actually feel like, especially on days like yesterday, that little bit of fan side of me does come back in, and I just love it. Oh, ice cream van coming. Haven't heard that in a while. That shows you it is finally a nice day. About to go by. I don't know if you picked that up on the camera. Hopefully. A little bit of a running gag from the way earlier videos. And now Walker and White sketch when the ambulance goes by. Never going to sell ice cream going at that speed. That's not one for the young crowd. But yeah, I do kind of feel like when I'm really enjoying what I'm watching as well as what I'm reporting on, the kind of fan side of me does start to come back a little bit. I was quite happy with that. I don't think you want that side of you to completely die. You don't want to be this cold, clinical reporter type. You want to have that little element of really loving the fact that your team is also doing well. And definitely, watching the football that Postecoglou has brought to the club has reignited a little bit of that as well. So I was quite happy with that. I was quite happy. I've always prided myself on trying to be a journalist and as professional as I possibly can and being objective and not seeing things like a fan. Because let's be honest, when we look at stuff at our fan head, we do switch off to logic sometimes, and we switch off to anything other than very much looking at things from a Spurs perspective. But yeah, no, that was quite nice. That was quite nice to kind of really think about that and the fact that ultimately that's why we all love football in the first place, was because we became fans of often it's a club, sometimes it's a player that gets you into it. It can be anything. I was always going to be Spurs, but weirdly when I was a kid, Gary Lineker was my absolute football hero. And that was before he was a Spurs player. That would have been his Everton days. Yeah. So I was a Spurs fan, but my favourite player was Gary Lineker. And then obviously you can imagine when he joined Spurs, it was like the greatest thing in the world ever. But yeah, sorry. Going down personal road there, which is of no interest probably to most people whatsoever. Let's talk about smiling and everyone being happy at Spurs. And players are loving the football they're playing right now. They're being asked to play. This is the key kind of foundations of it all, that Postecoglou wants to get them back to playing the football that they would play as kids. The kind of, not obviously basic like kick around stuff, but the kind of enjoyable attacking football that made them fall in love with the game in the first place. And he's got them doing that. The training sessions, honestly, they're wowed by them, the players. Postecoglou's put together, again, I don't know how he does it. That is one of his biggest masterstrokes, has to be being able to assemble coaching staff from scratch, transfer his entire ideas and philosophy to them, and getting them creating these amazing sessions. Because honestly, I've heard from people in and around the club, people in and around the players, everyone, just how much these training sessions are fantastic right now. We know football. We know at some stage that disillusioned players will always turn and criticise training sessions at some point. But right now, they're loving it. You know, there's a lot of praise coming. There's Chris Davies' way, the senior assistant head coach. He's obviously doing a lot of the running of the sessions and a lot of planning things and running it by Postecoglou. Ryan Mason and Matty Wells as well. Both love their attacking football. This is the beauty of the team that he's put together. Chris Davies is very possession-based attacking football. That's what he's kind of was with Brendan Rodgers a lot, did a lot of that sort of football. So he's very easily bought into the Postecoglou way. Same with Ryan Mason and Matty Wells. Both people, coaches that love attacking front foot football and also having the ball, not playing counter-attacking. So all three of them have just absolutely are on board, and the fact that they're so enthused and excited about it is coming across in the training sessions for the players. And you've got Mile Jedinak, who is kind of in the earlier days of his coaching journey. He was sat just behind us during the game, actually, behind the press box, technically in the press box. His role right now during matches is with the analysts is to look down and watch what's happening from a different perspective and be able to feed that down to the bench and for half time and after the game. A bit like Gianluca Conte was doing for his brother Antonio. But yeah, and obviously Rob Birch, the goalkeeping coach there. Everyone's happy right now. This is weird. Look, it's not all sunshine and smiles. You know, we're going to talk about the transfer window and some of the things in that really could have been done a lot better. But people within the club are happy. The players are happy. Ange is happy. The fans are happy. You know, they got their Tottenham back. Thank goodness for that. They've got, other than Fulham aside, I'm not going to dwell on Fulham because, to be honest, I was only able to watch little bits and pieces of it, which I'm sure many of you, especially those who went to it, are saying, you are a lucky man. Because I spoke to Guesty about it yesterday and he was telling me it was just horrendous in parts. I don't know. I don't think he had to make that many changes. I did think he had to make changes because you had 3 games in a week and he wanted to also look at other players as well. I would have personally thought maybe 5 changes, 6 at the most would have been enough. But yeah, to make 9 I felt was it contributed. It did contribute. But it's all part of the lesson for him, I think, with kind of what's expected at Spurs and all of that sort of stuff. And especially having a cup tie against a very difficult Premier League team straight off the bat as well. I think someone was saying at Celtic he would play very strong teams early in the competition as well. So I don't know what happened. But I don't want to dwell on that because, yeah, it's a cup route gone. And it is very disappointing. But I kind of feel like it's a bit of a bump in the road compared to all of the other good stuff that's happened so far. So I don't want to dwell on it. And we all kind of whinge and moan because I think it's now in the rearview mirror. Unfortunately, you know, I'm not lessening it or saying that it wasn't an absolute mess. Obviously, it came down to penalties in the end, but you know, Spurs playing the way they played yesterday, you know, with a stronger team, you would have thought come away with the win. So it is very disappointing, but I think we now have to look forward. And yesterday was fantastic. And do you know what? Ange Postecoglou was grinning from ear to ear after the game, and he's quite a difficult guy to please. Certainly, you know, I often ended up getting lumbered with the first question in a post-match press conference because no one else wants to take it, and it is often the, you know, were you pleased with that? Are you pleased with the performance? Blah blah blah. And he's always quite, you know, he's always quite kind of. You know, he took on the 2 Larry David styles. He's not pretty good. He's more most times. But you know, I think we've seen a couple of instances. One was after the Man U game when he was grinning away and waving to his family. And yesterday there was a little moment and he just where he savoured it. He just savoured the display and the performance. Because let's be honest, Turf Moor, I kind of alluded to it earlier, it is not a place where Spurs go and score a lot of goals. It's not really. It's mostly, I think there was a run, wasn't there, of 1-0 scorelines at Turf Moor. And it is the place where Antonio Conte had a little bit of one of his meltdowns and told everyone he was going to quit, told the players, I think, that he was going to quit. Essentially said, you know, maybe it's me, maybe I should quit, was the way he kind of termed it, didn't he? It's the place where Pochettino had his bust up with Mike Dean, didn't he, and got sent off. What else has happened there? There was more. Oh, Mourinho had his tore apart Tongi as well after the game, saying how, because he took him off at half time. It's like I say, it's been a snowed off postponement game. It's been seen of some awful weather as well for various matches. Yet here it was, glorious sunshine, Spurs scoring 5 goals, and I think Postecoglou himself, he just lapped up his little moment in front of the fans. He's got this way, you'll notice that he always lets the players go off first. Always lets the players go off to the travelling fans, lets them have their moment with them, a kind of a mutual appreciation, and then he'll kind of be applauding from the background, and then he'll go up and he'll applaud the fans. And yesterday, what they were doing, if you haven't seen it, they were singing the Basuma song. You know, it's Tequila, but with Basuma added in. And Postecoglou was going really like more. He was really kind of playing along and enjoying himself. And then there was one moment he spotted Basuma across. He was behind one of the goals. I think he'd changed. I think he'd taken a Burnley player's shirt, so he wasn't actually wearing a Spurs shirt, I think. And he loves, every time he hears his own song, he like does his little dance and everything. And Postecoglou just saw him and started pointing. It was like, hey, it's like a proper David Brent like kind of thing. It was really funny. And it just for that moment, let his guard down. And he's getting a real connection quite quickly. I think it's something he wants to always do at every club he goes to, really forge a strong bond with the fans. He knows it helps him, of course he does. But also, it kind of fuels him, I think, in the way he manages, because he's, like he's always saying, what he wants, he always says the best judge of his football will be the fans, more so than anyone above him in any football club. So he knows that if he can bring them the football they want, then he'll get the time to implement what he wants. And that will naturally lead, in every job he's been into some form of success, and normally quite a bit of it as well. It was quite a nice little moment. This kind of huge Cheshire Cat style grin on his face. And what I think the most important thing that Postecoglou has done within this squad already, we're only 4 weeks into the season. What he's managed to do is create a new, fresh structure within the squad. It's a very different feeling squad. Obviously, we know about this leadership group, of course, of Sonny, James Maddison and Christian Romero. Funnily enough, all 3 of them were the goal scorers yesterday as well, which was leading by example, exactly what he wants. But he's also got players like Basuma and Vicario that he's really placing quite a bit of like a challenge on them also, almost to also be a leading voice for the young players, because this is a very young squad. When you look at it, those 5 players pretty much are your older players now, who certainly the ones who are going to be involved regularly within the team. And the good thing for him is that all of them have absolutely head over heels bought into the Postecoglou way. You can see it on the pitch and you can see it off the pitch as well. And I'd actually say, I could be wrong, and this could have happened elsewhere, but I kind of feel like there's a closeness between them that maybe hasn't been there at other clubs, as in between the players and Postecoglou, especially these senior players. I could be wrong. I know certainly he's a funny character. Certain players in his past have spoken about feeling close to him, yet never really speaking to him much. It's because of this whole thing we've spoken about, where he's not a man for small talk. He doesn't have a good old chat with them. But I just kind of feel, looking at some of the players, like Basuma calls him his uncle and stuff like that. And you see, he gave him such a huge hug after the game, like a real kind of, like that, like a relative's hugging at Basuma and him. I watched them on the pitch. It was before he started going off and doing his little dance, Basuma. And Sonny's got a great relationship. Sonny is just a force of nature. He's got a great relationship with every manager that's come through that door. But especially, and even Conte as well, honestly. He get on with Conte, despite the fact that, he wasn't exactly playing him in the best possible way. But with Postecoglou and something like, you've probably seen it maybe, that after the game, he's... Sonny was doing his interview with Spurs Play, and Postecoglou interrupted it, like jokingly told him, you should have scored 4 goals. And he put his arm around him. It was very matey. And it may be something I asked Postecoglou I don't know whether he'd kind of get into it or not. To be fair, he's been really good with my questions. I've been very, very kind of pleased that he's given real insightful stuff. We really kind of dug into the whole club signing idea on Friday ahead of the game, and whether he would ever accept club signings. Like Conte said, Jed Spence was a club signing and wasn't someone obviously he had pushed for, and Danjuma, he did similar as well. And he really was good on that. Essentially, then went into an area where he said, I would never say that a player was not mine, because I would not have a player here that was not a player that I really wanted to come to the club. Honestly, look them up. I'm not going to go through this because they're a few days old now, but honestly, have a look on my Twitter feed and you'll see them all. But yeah, I just wonder with Postecoglou whether he would actually admit that maybe because it's, I don't want to be disparaging to any other club he's managed, but maybe because it's a higher level, maybe because it's bigger players, and maybe he's felt he had to connect with them even more. I don't know. Or it could just be this is how he is with everyone. Every player he has. I don't know. But I don't know. It's just something I've noticed. As you can tell, I'm someone that likes to... It sounds weird. I'm someone that likes to watch. I like to kind of observe. I like to pick up on little kind of mannerisms, little ways people are. And hopefully that's why I'm able to write and talk about the various things I do. Because I kind of try to look at everything around the game as well as what's in it. But just most of all, Spurs needed a real fresh wind blown through the club. It was some stale, stinky air in that club. It needed all the doors opening, quite literally with some players heading out of them. And it just needed this fresh air blown through. And that is Postecoglou. And it is also, I think, the captaincy decisions, I think, have played a major, major role. And also the overhaul of the squad. Because as much as, there's some definitely things about the transfer window that we can have gripes with and the way Spurs approached it. And I do think having no director of football did impact them. Well, not an official director of football anyway, with Mr. Paratici in his consultancy role. But what I would say is you can't deny that this is a different Tottenham team. 5 of the players who started yesterday were new faces, including Destiny Udogie. Of course, he joined technically a year ago, but did not arrive until this summer. So you've got 5 new faces in the squad, but then you also got another 2 who, let's be honest, were not regulars last season in Basuma and Pape Matar. So that is 7 of the 11 that are new-ish players, or new and irregular players previously. And also you've got this captaincy group who are relishing it. Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen 3 human beings take to a new role so enthusiastically. They were the ones, the 3 of them were the ones that leading the players over to the fans at the end. You'll watch them, honestly. It was those 3. Romero had the armband because Sonny and Maddison had both gone off. So Romero had the armband, and there was this really nice moment where he went and he kissed the armband in front of the fans. But it was almost not for the fans. He kind of was having a kind of a hug and a chat with Sonny, and it was while he was talking to him that he kissed it. It wasn't almost like he was doing it in front of the fans as a show. It was almost just this little gesture that he loved having that armband on. And I think that says a lot about Romero, really. He's just got this real respect for his new role, the club, and I think also the fans as well. And there was this terrific interview on the summer tour that we put out there that with Romero, just saying how it's almost like he didn't feel like people realised how connected he was with Spurs now, how he was turning down offers to go abroad. I think the Saudi clubs maybe were trying to get him as well and offer him lots of money. I'm pretty sure I remember hearing that. Or maybe I read it somewhere. But I know he certainly admitted that there were clubs looking at him and trying to sign him, and he had no interest. A lot of it was Postecoglou. I do wonder whether Romero, with a different manager, maybe would have been considering his future after everything that had happened before. But with Postecoglou, he's all in. Let's be honest. Postecoglou wants players to be brave, show skill on the ball, take risks, and be aggressive. If there was a picture in an encyclopedia that had that description underneath it, it would be Christian Romero's face just kind of looking back at you. And he's just taken to it so well. He has really control. He will lapse at some point with a bad tackle or something. We know he will. But on the whole, he's really reined in a lot of his kind of excess kind of. I'm just trying to see if he's even. I'm trying to remember if he's got a yellow card yet. Let's have a look. Sorry, I know it's a bit unprofessional, but it's just something that crossed my mind. I didn't put it in my notes, and I'm just getting up his page now. He has not a single yellow card across his 4 games, and he's also scored 2 goals. He is second joint top goal scorer. He's really been dominant, been excellent, loving life at the club. Really, I feel like he's very popular. I think there was a kind of a time when maybe the South Americans, out of a natural kind of tendency, was sticking quite closely together. But I feel like Romero now is quite universally popular within that group. I do think he's a little bit like Lamela in training sessions, that he will leave his mark on people. But I think they just realise that's just who he is. He is just a guy that gives everything in every moment, whether it's training, whether it's a football match. But yeah, just keep an eye on Romero and the way he is right now. Like I say, he could have a lapse. Could have a silly moment, sometimes maybe out of a tiredness or desperation, but on the whole, he's absolutely stepped up. And Maddison's the same. Maddison is throwing himself into this role. He is constantly talking to other players, encouraging them. He's got this great rapport with the fans already. He's just come in, and I think, Postecoglou said it before, it's the right time in his career. He needed a change. He needed a new level to play at, and he needed, I think, a need to kind of just impress and connect with everyone. He's just done it superbly. Honestly, I'd say he is up there with my favourite players right now at Tottenham Hotspur, with Sonny and a couple of others as well. He's phenomenal. We'll talk about him a little bit to come anyway. But I do think it's no coincidence that this kind of Spurs team is playing with a smile on its face, loving its football, enjoying itself, and it is kind of epitomised by the fact that their captain is one of the smiliest people, always grinning, that you will ever see. I quite like the fact that Sonny has really stepped up to be the captain. Look, I know he's been the captain of South Korea before, and obviously he's had a lot of weight on his shoulders when he does that. And he will be doing that again with this international break. But I do think, and I said it before, that still people have been surprised at just how good a club captain he is on a daily basis and how much he's thrown himself into it. And, a few players, I think Destiny Udogie was talking about him as well in his post-match interview. He's just fully invested into it, and he's impressed everyone, the players, the staff, people within the club. Again, maybe a bit like Maddison, it was just a challenge he needed at this time. He needed to become, with Kane going, he became the main man. He became the figurehead for the club. And I think he relishes that. Whenever Kane's been out in the past, we've said it before, Sonny has stepped up. And it's just giving him the responsibility, a massive pat on the back from Postecoglou. He's a smiley man, and now the club, Tottenham Hotspur, are smiling again. It's thank goodness, because we were not smiling before. And Postecoglou spoke about the three of them. He said, I thought today was a real testament to Sonny, Maddison and Romero. They all scored, but those three I've thrust into leadership positions, and the way they've embraced that responsibility with not only words but actions, not just on game day, but on a daily basis, that's as encouraging for me as anything. Because as fantastic players as they are individually, they've all really bought into that team ethic. And I think that's the thing. It's creating a different Tottenham team in this post-Kane era. It was always going to be loads of questions, wasn't there? After Kane was leaving, would Spurs be massively negatively impacted? Could they become a better team? Could they, like a phoenix from the flames, kind of rise out of the ashes, I guess, a bit like Liverpool and Coutinho when they sold him? Could they actually become a better unit without him? Look, don't get me wrong. But before you even go anywhere near that argument, you have to acknowledge that Harry Kane within this system would have scored a ridiculous amount of goals. I do wonder sometimes, is there a part of him while he's wearing his lederhosen and enjoying the delights of Munich, is a little part of him that thinks, I would have scored a lot of goals in that system. I really would have. I'm sure he's very content with his move. He is at a massive club and he's going to win lots of trophies, in the Bundesliga and the German domestic cups. And he will hope the Champions League as well. But I just, there must be a little part of him. And, like I said before, there was a little wobble before the move itself. And I wonder whether any of that played its part. Did he think, I could maybe have got near Shearer's record in this one season alone with the amount of chances Spurs are going to create for me now. Maybe not. Maybe it didn't even cross his mind. But the most important thing in Kane's absence is that Tottenham needed to become a different entity to what it has in previous years. I had to kind of cut a lot of the ties to the painful seasons that have been in recent years. That's not to say the players involved are terrible or anything like that. I'm not jumping on any bandwagons there. But they just had to kind of move into a fresh era and it be something different. Something that the fans could identify with again. Not have the views on certain players from the past. Something new to reconnect to. The new, fresh and exciting is always something that kind of gives you a new lease of life. Of course it does. And, I don't think it's any coincidence that old leadership group, Lloris, Højbjerg, Dyer, and of course Kane, have not started a single match this season. Of course, Kane can't. He's playing for a different club. But, only Højbjerg has been involved from the bench. He's the only one that's played any minutes whatsoever. Lloris is in this funny position of he's been rejecting offer after offer from clubs. I wonder whether Hugo Lloris has kind of thought this summer, okay, I'm either, a few scenarios. Either a club's going to come in for me, I'm going to have a great big move somewhere. Fantastic. Or Spurs will pay me off. I'll get the end of my contract and then I'll head off somewhere on a free transfer. But as it is, every club that's come in for Lloris thus far, and I know he rejected, I think, a couple of offers from Saudi leagues as well, but everything that's been offered to him pretty much has been as a backup goalkeeper. That's got to be a bit soul-crushing, I suppose. At this stage, he probably thought he was going to go somewhere. He wasn't going to quite be the old backup keeper yet. Even Nice tried to sign him late in the window. And actually, there's some Lloris quotes. He spoke to Nice Matin, the French media outlet, who he seems to have a very good relationship with. He did when he said that he wanted a new challenge just after the end of the season, he did so to them as well. So sometimes that happens. Just players will form a little bond with a journalist that's maybe been there their whole career. Often it is, or Nice Matin obviously is from his hometown. So his quotes, he said, "I want to clear up the ambiguity surrounding the events of the past hours. Yesterday, an hour before the end of the window, I received a call from an agent who evoked the possibility of joining Nice. Playing prospects and a sporting project, the real motors behind a player's decision, much more so than financial conditions, weren't clearly broached. My professional journey has shown that exchange, sharing and collective growth have always forged my decisions, even more so when it's about coming back to the club that trained me. The supporters and the team deserve better than a split-second decision based on a phone call without expectations or a clear sporting project with 1 hour until the closure of the window at a time where I wasn't expecting it. To be honest, I couldn't sign without this common shared vision, at least with the president and the coach. Nice is and will remain a different club for me. It is my city, my club, my blood. A goalkeeper is in place today. I think it's Bolka, is it? The Nice keeper? Because I know Kasper Schmeichel left. He is without a doubt one of the best at the start of the season. He has a promising career ahead of him. Joining a club to play, to build, to perform, yes. Signing without a sporting vision and a direct positive impact on the team, no." So essentially, kind of seems like he wasn't going to be the first choice keeper there. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens with Lloris. Postecoglou has pretty much made it clear that he's told Lloris he's not going to be in his squad. He's kind of strongly suggested that in his answers that he's said to us. So I don't know what will happen with Lloris. I do wonder whether he's waiting to be paid off by Spurs, but that's a lot of money. That's, you think he is one of the bigger earners at the club and you've still got almost a year's worth of contract left. That's a lot of money. This is why when people say, like, just pay the players off and just get rid of them. Like, someone was saying that for Tongi the other day. And it's like, 2 years of Tongi's contract. That would probably mean paying them off, I don't know, off the top of my head, like, I don't know, 18 million? Something crazy like that. You don't just throw away to 18 million. If you have to, just get him out on loan. Get him out on loan somewhere or take a cut price offer for him. You don't pay 18 million. I think this seems to be the case with Lloris as well, because you've still got the Saudi window open for another few weeks. You've got the Turkish window open. I think there's maybe another 1 or 2 as well. So while there's any chance of someone coming in, because Spurs, I don't think will, from what I understand, will not ask for a fee for Lloris. They will, let him head off to where he wants to be. But I guess from Lloris' perspective, he's probably thinking, but if I just join another club where I'm going to probably earn less than I was at Spurs, well, what about the last year of my contract kind of thing? So there would have to be some kind of signing on fee, I guess, from the club that are trying to sign him. But obviously that would not be Spurs' responsibility. So yeah, Spurs would surely wait until the last possible moment before they have to make a decision on whether they pay him off at all or not. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if nothing happens for Lloris, which is surprising, let's be honest, at the end of the day, Spurs and him would have to come to some kind of mutual agreement, because unless he were to leave in January, that's the only thing. But to have a player like that on, there's talk about maybe, I don't know, 200 grand a week, whatever his wages are, sitting there being paid to do nothing, it just serves no purpose. So you probably would have to come to a mutual agreement there eventually. But there's a little bit of time left on that one. Let's see what happens. I just don't know. Don't know whether he would change his mind on Saudi League, or whether he would go on loan somewhere for a few, like even for 6 months. I don't know. It's a very odd situation. This is what Spurs find themselves in. This is the thing. We talk about right now about Postecoglou trying to change the team and the being 7 different players in the starting 11 pretty much. In next summer, you are going to have Lloris, probably Sanchez and Dyer, all probably gone, unless one of them does somehow sign a new contract, but all 3 you'd expect will be gone. So that's 3 more that have kind of been there around, and Spurs have needed to move on, or wanted to move on, out the club. And then you've got someone like Højbjerg who'll be in his final year. Whether you get the same scenario or not, I don't know. But ultimately, a lot of the broom being swept through the club is sweeping a lot of these players out of there, kind of thing. It sounds very cold and brutal, but you know what I mean. And Eric Dyer. God, Eric Dyer couldn't even get on the bench yesterday. Ashley Phillips, 18-year-old Ashley Phillips. I saw him come in. He's a big lad. He is a big lad. He's 18 years old. Has never played. He's only played 8 championship games, I think, in his life, and he's on that bench ahead of an England international. And if that doesn't say everything, I guess, to Eric Dyer about exactly where his place is in the pecking order, I don't know what does. And we'll talk about. There's some little kind of noises around Davinson Sanchez I saw from some Turkish media. I don't know if that makes any sense whatsoever, but we'll talk about that at the end when we kind of wrap up the transfer window. When I asked, funny enough, Postecoglou about Højbjerg and how he was taking not being one of the leaders anymore, Postecoglou kind of came out with this line about how the only way you can make things different at the football club, or any football club, is to enact change. Is to just go about things a different way. Stop going about the way things were being done beforehand, because clearly that did not bring success. And he made it very clear. It doesn't mean that his change was going to be better or more successful, but you don't know whether it is or not unless you try. It certainly has to be different. And I guess at this point, it does feel better. It does right now. Spurs have had their first 4 games. Yes, you could argue that a couple of the games, Burnley and Bournemouth, maybe teams they're supposed to beat. Brentford, we know, is a tough ask for any club. That was a tough game. And Man U, obviously, is one of the bigger games you can get in football, albeit with a Man U team that there's a little bit kind of shaky at the moment right now, aren't they? I'm recording this before their their game today, so we don't know exactly what's going to come. But yeah, it feels better. It feels like Spurs have got a swagger about their play. They've got the confidence in Postecoglou that he's got their back. If they make a mistake, they know he'll say, yeah, but they were doing what I want them to do. I've got no issue with that. He's made that very clear to us as well. And I think these early results, being probably more positive than anyone expected at such an early stage, have been a real quick, positive, instant reinforcement that Postecoglou football brings victory. And that's a big thing as well, because those players, you know, there might have been a little bit of a worry about, oh yeah, but is he actually? It's lovely stuff, but are we going to get tonked at the back? Are we going to concede so many goals, kind of thing? But at the moment, yeah, they conceded 4 goals, but they came in 2 games. They scored 11, and it's lovely stuff. It's lovely football, and I think the key thing for me is that we said this before. Postecoglou said the moment he would know that the team is starting to really click into what he wants is when they do stuff through instinct rather than his instruction. And I would say, Mr. Postecoglou, please have a little look at Tottenham's. I'm sure he will have a big look at all of the goals, but Sonny's hat-trick goal. If anyone wants to see how the Spurs players have bought into Postecoglou football, look at that goal. It all starts with a really lovely Romero interception at the back. It's a lovely little silky turn, keeps the ball on, knocks it out. And from that point on, for the next 40, 45 seconds or so, it is just Spurs players constantly like this little kind of confident first-time passing in and around the Burnley players that are trying to press them and just being completely unable to get anywhere near them. Maddison comes deep. He starts just strutting his staff, just kind of playing the ball around, linking up. It's all about these little quick passes and triangles. And then he plays the ball out to Pedro Porro. Pedro Porro then plays one of those passes that, had it been a De Bruyne, had it been a Pirlo from the past, had it, you know, been any one of those lauded playmakers, people would have gone mad. But because it's a Spurs right back, no one, probably other than a few, that's a really great ball, that. No one makes a mad. It is an incredible ball. The curl, the weight on the pass to go straight into Sonny's run is beautiful. And Sonny, fully confident Sonny, just strokes it home. Honestly, that was Postecoglou football. It's beautiful from start to finish. From literally, Romero gets it on his own touchline, and it goes blah, 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 blah. I didn't count the passes, but I'm sure it's got to be up there with 20, 30 passes, and it's all progressive. It's not passes for the sake of it. It is up, all the way up the pitch, and that's the beauty. It's short passes, and then suddenly you've got this killer Porro ball. So good, and there's all these little kind of relationships forming, and this is a kind of football that we haven't seen for so long. It's bewitching, it's beguiling, it's wonderful to watch on the eye. Watch the little link up between Sarr and Maddison, which led to Maddison having that shot that James Trafford had to make a flying save and push away. It's starting becoming instinctive, and that's what Postecoglou wanted. And also, what's beautiful about it is it's not just style with no substance. There's a grit, there's an aggression behind it as well. This relentless need to get forward is also comes from the relentless need to get the ball back. Just watch Mickey van der Ven's part in Son's second goal, because the Dutchman plays a big part, honestly. And I have to massively praise van der Ven as well. Again, he has settled into Premier League life so well. He's going to have little odd moments where he's slightly off or out of position because he's 22. But on the whole, he has settled so well. But watch him for that second goal. He battles away to bring the ball out of defence. I think someone maybe gets a touch or something, or someone else gets in the way. He then wins the ball back with a challenge. He then plays it forward to Destiny Udogie, who... he's just remarkable, Destiny Udogie. We'll talk about him in a second. Honestly, I think he's gone under the radar as probably being one of the best fullbacks in the Premier League so far this season. I know it's only 4 games, but my goodness, people... I'm kind of glad they're not talking about him, but my goodness, he has been phenomenal. So, Udogie then knocks the ball inside to Solomon, who then knocks it inside to Sonny to smash it home. Udogie was magnificent. He it just feels like he's found his place in the Premier League. He's found his place at Tottenham. He just looks utterly at ease. He's 20 years old. It's disgraceful how well he is adjusting. And it makes a mockery of all of supposed experts and myself claiming that players need these massive adaptation periods. You know, Pochettino once said a foreign player coming in needs 18 months to 2 years to really hit the ground running. Udogie's just said, yeah, hold my beer. And obviously he won't be holding any beer or drinking beer while playing for Tottenham Hotspur, I'm sure. But you know what I mean? It's just, I really like Udogie. Having also spoken to him out on in Australia during the tour, he's such a nice guy, good character, thinker about the game as well. And you can see, again, he's settled in so well. He was involved in pretty much almost all of the goals in some capacity yesterday. He's got a brilliant engine, as well as the skill and strength, to get up the pitch, and he's defending really well, but then he's getting up the other end and kind of being the crucial final part of moves. I think he won the ball back a couple of times, a couple of the goals. He obviously also played the ball in for Maddison, wasn't it, for Maddison's goal, which was a lovely strike in itself as well. I looked up, actually I didn't look up, I had this nicely easily. I think there was a tweet I saw that gave me all of the stats from Udogie. It said he had 100% final third pass accuracy, 93% pass accuracy across the whole pitch, one possession 14 times, came out on top of 8 of his 10 duels, and he won 5 tackles and made 3 clearances. He's been brilliant. I cannot praise Destiny Udogie enough. But there's just a real pride in everything the players are doing. They're celebrating little moments, not just goals. Like Vicario made a terrific save to deny Lyle Foster yesterday. It was actually, Romero deserves a little bit of credit as well. Romero got across, made a last gasp kind of challenge, which gave a little bit of deflection to the ball, but it was still going in. Vicario made a superb tip over his goal. And he celebrated it like he'd just scored. It was brilliant. And that's what you want. You want the players to be relishing, enjoying everything they're doing, because they're all contributing. And they're bouncing back after, they conceded against Burnley within, 4 minutes? They won. They scored 5 goals. We've said this about Spurs. There often has been a grit about them, even when they've had these really disastrous collapses in games. On the whole, there's always been quite a resolute nature to Tottenham in the last... And under all of these previous managers that obviously have been saying the football hasn't great, but also Postecoglou, I think, Postecoglou. I did this before. Now I'm starting to call Pochettino Postecoglou. I'm doing it the other way around. Can they not have such similar-ish sounding names or syllables anyway? Even under Pochettino, there was a resilience that came in. It started... No, it was still there kind of towards the end. But... yeah, it's all part of it as well, and they're bouncing back after making mistakes. Like Porro is a great example yesterday. I felt Porro was too easily beaten for me by Luka Kolyoshu in the build-up to Burnley. There's so many Bs. Brentford, Burnley and Bournemouth. Can I play anyone with different letters, please, at the start? After the first Burnley goal, he was too easily beaten, I felt. And that's happened a couple of times in pre-season as well, where players have just got past him. It's the one element that he's going to have to adapt to, I think, still with becoming a right-back rather than a wing-back. But having had that moment, he then had the ball over the top to Sonny for the first goal. The interchange of passes. Saw Sonny did that beautiful little dink chip over the keeper and covering defender. But he does. Porro did that, and then he did that beautiful ball to Sonny for the third goal as well. It's about bouncing back. And Basuma, kind of similar. Basuma, I felt there's little moments where he was a bit sloppy in his play. He would lose the ball, or he would get caught out of position up the pitch. But he would battle back, work hard, and again, ended up being a really dominant performance from him. His... let's be honest, the Conte experience was rubbish for him. It was. If you want to see any players... it's probably Sonny and Basuma, isn't it? Who Conte just didn't really use properly in any shape or form. And it's no coincidence, I think, that they are 2 of Spurs' star players this season. And it's intriguing to know. There was always these little murmurings and rumours that maybe Conte hadn't wanted James Maddison. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know whether that's true. Please don't aggregators say, there were suggestions. I don't know whether that's the case or not. There's only little kind of things you hear, and it may have even been that I just read it on social media. Who knows in today's world? If it's true, if there's any shred of truth to that, what? Why? James Maddison has been one of the biggest transfer signings that Spurs have made in years. James Maddison, I have no idea why other clubs did not go for him. I am entirely grateful that other clubs did not really push him. I know only Newcastle really did with Spurs, because James Maddison is fantastic. Honestly, he should be starting for England. He is in that kind of form. It's a part of me that kind of selfishly doesn't even want him to. I'd rather he is wrapped up in cotton wool this next 2 weeks. Stupid international break. It really does get in the way. But Maddison is just the beating creative heart of everything Postecoglou desires from this Tottenham Hotspur team. He is phenomenal. He knits it all together, but he does so with a work rate that Postecoglou loves. Honestly, he keeps his speed of thought in his play is remarkable. When we talk about instinct, he just has this instinct of how to use the ball and a radar inbuilt where he knows where players are on the pitch. He loves hitting these quick outside of the foot passes, which are just phenomenal. And his goal was just beautiful. He will score a lot of goals like that this season because he breaks into the box. I've said this before, and I'm sorry to bore people that have heard me say this so many times, but I just love the fact that he can put the ball on a sixpence or he can dribble past someone with at any given moment, and he can run into the box at any moment, but then he can also be on the edge of his own box, tackling and working hard for the team. It's just superb, honestly. I have no idea why Spurs have dithered around in recent years, even at a higher cost. For me, Maddison right now is looking like £100 million player at least. It's just keep him clear of injuries because he is going to be the difference maker for me. He brings everything Kane did in a creative capacity and more for me. That's how highly I rate James Maddison. Look, obviously Harry Kane has all the goals, so that's a very helpful thing. But I'd still go back to the fact that Kane playing in front of Maddison. We saw a little glimpse of it, didn't we, in the Shakhtar friendly of him setting up with a headed goal, and you do think he scored 4 goals that day. What Kane could have scored this season with Maddison threading things through to him. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing player. And he takes so many kicks for the team. He is one of those players that defenders just have a bit of a nibble at. And he will go down. He will do all the bits of gamesmanship as well. He will wind up the opposition fans. He will have a bit of fun with them, as he did, was it against Bournemouth, when he deliberately didn't put the ball on the corner spot. And they were like, I love that video. The best bit of that video, if you haven't seen it, it's a really funny little exchange. They're singing about, I can't remember what they were singing to him now. Something about why Southgate doesn't like you. I think that was something like that. But he takes it like such a lad. And there is a moment at the end of the video, you could just hear one of the Bournemouth fans going, "Oh, he's a good lad, isn't he?" I just like that, really tickled me. It was like the favourite part of the whole actual video. But on that kind of taking the hits and kind of being there to wind up the opposition fans as well. Postecoglou said about that, he said, "I've only got to know him recently as a person, but he's a very strong, resilient guy. He's mentally strong and he likes not to be targeted, but he wants the ball and he wants to be in those situations. He has that quality. He is so creative. And today he showed how clinical he is in front of goal, and his preparedness to work hard for the team, I think, is a great example." I love Maddison, honestly. I do. And he's a really nice guy. I had lucky to ask him a few questions out in Thailand, and interestingly, he was one of the ones that, as they were coming in, he's very much in the zone. He's very much focused on kind of on what he's got to do. He got his earphones around on his head, the big ones, and yeah, superb. Manor Solomon as well. I was pleasantly surprised with Manor Solomon. What I've seen of him thus far, I've seen a very dangerous, threatening player, but without the end product. And I feel like his stats have kind of borne that out a little bit over the years. And my only fear with him was, we're going to get another Lucas Moura, in that lots of dangerous play, will have some big moments, but is he ultimately going to contribute in the final third regularly enough? Well, funnily enough, there was one moment early on in the game when he was going through, and there was a moment he could have got it across to Sonny, and he took a shot instead. And I was like, oh no, don't prove me kind of my fears correct. But as it was, he blew them away as the game wore on. He 2 assists for Sonny. It's just a constant nuisance. He's like a fly to the Burnley players. They're constantly kind of swatting him away. He's such a kind of like a diminutive dribbler. He's so little and great low centre of gravity that he must be very difficult to get off the ball. And Spurs are at this point now where they've got players like Heung-min and Maddison and Kulusevski and Pape Matar at some points as well, where they've all got this ability to, and Sonny of course, to drift right to the touchline. Just when you think you've got them, they take this little extra touch that gets the touchline before they can then ping it back across into the 6-yard box. And it's going to be such a big thing, especially with the Postecoglou way of these low crosses as well. And then there's Sonny. I'm going to take full ownership of the fact that I thought Sonny would be great as the number 9 through the middle. I don't like to bang my own drum, is that the word? But I've made it very clear in bits I've written and stuff I've said on here, and even a tweet, funnily enough, the night before the game, that I felt that in the Postecoglou system, Sonny could be brilliant through the centre. Because of that, like I said, the low crosses that come in, is less reliance on him to head the ball. It's not one of the game's biggest kind of headers of a ball, but the low crosses and the ability to use a different kind of setup slightly with him through the centre, I felt could be successful. I maybe did not envisage within 24 hours I was going to be proved correct by a hat-trick, but again, I just felt it all fitted his game beautifully. He's not going to probably hold the ball up with the ball is back to the opposition goal, as Richarlison, to be fair to him, came on and did that quite effectively late in the game yesterday. And Sonny's, that's not what his game is about. But in terms of the movement and the quality and the devastating kind of, when he's confident, his finish, I've said this before, if you give Sonny too much time to think about something in front of goal, I feel like sometimes he'll overthink a shot. If you just put Sonny away and say, bang, finish that, he will smash it home, or he will do something beautiful. Like the first goal. First goal, just lovely little chip. It was so glorious when you watch it back from every angle. Second goal, bang, first time finish. Third goal, he did have that little bit extra time, but he was so confident from the first 2 goals that he put it in the near post. It was probably, that's part of it. The keeper was not expecting it that side. I just think, Postecoglou has spoken about him playing through the centre as well, and he just showed how lethal he can be. And Postecoglou was right. He probably could have got a 4th. Was it Kulusevski played him through quite early on? He just took a heavy touch, and the ball kind of went a little bit too far ahead of him. But Sonny was magnificent. I gave him a 10 in my player ratings. Everything he was doing, he was leading the team by example as well, and I'm so delighted he got off on the mark in that way. And honestly, I think Richarlison will be an effective rotation option. But at this moment in time, I would like to see Sonny play through the middle, because I think he will score so many goals. Honestly, he's... Yeah, and I was trying to think. Richarlison's probably the one player in that little group, as I was applauding the fans, who didn't look best pleased. I'd imagine... Look, it could have been very unfortunate. It could have just been the photos and the video clips I've seen have just kind of caught him in moments where he wasn't smiling. And there are other moments where he was smiling and applauding fans. But what I would say about Richarlison is he wears his heart on his sleeve. He is a guy that wears his emotions there on his face. And I have no doubt that Richarlison was entirely thoroughly fed up by the fact that he'd scored a goal and was not playing and starting the next game. And also will have watched one of his teammates, yet also rivals for his spot through the centre, go out there and score a hat-trick and be absolutely brilliant in the role. So he would not have been particularly delighted. But he will still get lots of football. I don't think he has to worry too much about that. And it was quite telling, I thought, that Postecoglou after the game, people asking him about, he scored, yes, Richarlison scored. And he was like, yeah, but I didn't actually think I thought he was worse than in the other match. I thought he played better in the other games he didn't score in. And as soon as he said that, I did start to have a little bit of a wonder, like, ooh, maybe that means he is going to go with the Sonny through the middle thing. And he did. And this is the thing, the Spurs fans have wanted a number 9, to come in, and you're selling Harry Kane, you need another number 9. And even myself, I would have maybe liked to have seen one come in. But to be fair to him, Postecoglou was very clear and insistent throughout. And this is why whenever people said to me, but they're going to sign another 9, aren't they? Surely. I'd say, well, look at the quotes. Postecoglou was quite insistent that he didn't really feel he needed another one. So I asked him afterwards, was Sonny's performance exactly the reason why you didn't need another one? And he kind of thought for a moment. He said, well, it's not exactly why, but it is one of the reasons. I've got a picture in my head of what I want the team to look like, and I keep saying that we're still at the beginning. We're still building, and there's still a lot to be done. It's about putting all the pieces together and at the same time not neglecting what's in front of you. There are some really good footballers at this club, and I think they have the ability to play in the way this team needs to set up. Sonny, whether he's playing central or wide, he's got all the characteristics. Mate, he can play in any system. But the way we play, he's ideal. And Sonny, in turn, he's loving life under Postecoglou. Of course he is. He's the captain of the football club. He scored a hat-trick. I think someone said it was his 5th hat-trick for Spurs, I think. I don't know if it was Premier League or all competitions. And he said after the game, he was interviewed by Optus Sports, the Australian broadcaster, I'm so grateful that I'm working with him. This was Sonny on Postecoglou. I've learnt so many things as a player, but also as a human being. It's been a fantastic journey until now, but I think in the future we'll have more fun working together. I'll do everything he asks because he's giving so much good information to us as a human and manager. We are very, very happy working with him. I think players should take more responsibility to make him happy and move this club forward. So the question now is, how much did Tottenham make Postecoglou happy, and how much did they move the club forward in the summer transfer window? Because obviously that has now come to a close. We are there. We are now in the regular season. Personally, I'm quite happy with that. I'm not a huge fan of the transfer window, especially the last week. I quite deliberately headed off to Italy, as you would have seen from the last video, for 5 nights. Just because the week before, I came back for transfer deadline day because with experience now of so many deadline days, the week before the transfer deadline day is pretty much almost always utter nonsense. 95% of the stuff that comes out is just garbage. It's speculation generated by agents trying to get a late move, or generated by people around players to try to get other clubs or rivals to come in for them. It can also sometimes be generated by clubs to try to engineer a move or get people to come in for a player who clubs might fear, someone else is going to try and sign them. We were going to wait late in the window. It's just guff, let's be honest. It's just a load of rubbish that often comes out. So I'm not always that desperate to be around for that. I'll come back for deadline day because that's when stuff really does happen. I'm kind of making it sound like they wheel me out. Put a tie on him and get him to sit there. But yeah, I kind of actually prefer earlier in the window when you can feel like there's proper kind of work going on. But yeah, I'm not really that fussed about that last week. And as it was, nothing really happened, did it, in that last week particularly, other than a couple of outgoings. So the transfer window itself, what are my thoughts on the transfer window itself? I think you have to look at it and see that Spurs sold the best player at the club, one of the greatest ever players, and certainly their all-time record goal scorer. Yeah, it's difficult to, let's be honest, hand on heart, say that they went out there and made a real statement or a splash in the market after selling him for £100 million or so. It's difficult to say that. I don't think that you could say that they reacted to his sale with a, don't worry, we'll do this kind of thing. I don't think that was really the case, and that can definitely be levelled against them. What Postecoglou will say, and he has said, is that, well, actually, the whole window was actually done with Kane's departure in mind. All of those bits and pieces were being put together because he knew he was going. I don't think it was always a definite that Kane was going to go, but I think there was probably a strong chance in his mind, in Postecoglou's mind. What I would say, definitely, we've got to the end of this window. I do think you can see a strengthening in the starting 11. You've taken Kane out of it. That's a massive loss, of course. But I would say that collectively, the starting 11 has been strengthened. I think you have to be able to say that. Because, let's be honest, it was a leaky backline, wasn't it? Where, was it 64 goals? I've tried to get the number out of my head. They conceded in the Premier League last season. But now you've got a brand new central defensive partnership together with Romero linking up with Mickey van der Ven. You've got Destiny Udogie. Yes, he didn't arrive in this window, but he arrived at the club this summer. So that back four now, suddenly, it's a lot better. Of course it is. And it's still gelling. Yeah, they've conceded a couple of goals. They've had 2 clean sheets out of the 4 Premier League games. But ultimately, they're going to gel. They're going to get much better. They're going to understand each other's game. I'm very excited about what that back four could do. Vicario behind them as well. Vicario, I feel, has really stepped up to the challenge thus far. I think he's been really good. I know there was kind of people being a bit over the top, panicky about him after the Brentford game, when I didn't really think he was as bad as people were saying. I think he's been really solid since. I think he's done everything asked him. I don't think he could have done much about the 2 goals yesterday. They were tough ones. They were very clinical finishes. Both from quite close range as well. But he made a terrific save. Confident in his handling. His footwork with the ball, I think, is improving constantly. You obviously naturally get moments when a goalkeeper's got the ball and he's being pressed, but I actually think he's dealt with it really well. Hasn't really lumped the ball out of play too much. He's used it quite effectively. And that's what Postecoglou has obviously wanted from him. So Vicario's come in there as well. And again, for him, he's another one. Clearly, it's about he'll get more and more authority the more he knows the players in front of him and what they're going to do. I think the gripe definitely with the back line is the fact that a couple of injuries and Spurs are back to having Eric Dyer and Davinson Sanchez in the back line at this moment in time. Both of whom we know the club have been looking to move on this summer, and both of whom have 9 months left of their contracts. So that's, look, I can't clearly state this any clearer than this. Postecoglou told me out in Barcelona, essentially I would like another centre-back after Van der Ven and Phillips had come. He did not get another centre-back. That, for me, is the biggest failing of the transfer window. Other people might look at different positions. For me, Postecoglou wanting another centre-back and not getting one is the biggest failing of the window for me, because that is the position where depth-wise it's not that great for me. It's probably the only area on the pitch I'd maybe say. I think there's depth in other areas. But, you've got Ashley Phillips, and his arrival does give Postecoglou another option, but he is inexperienced. He's very talented, and he's a big lad, and he fits the bill nicely, which is why he was on the bench. Postecoglou clearly has been impressed enough with him. He's been in first team training under him that he put him there ahead of Dyer. But yeah, that's definitely was a big failure for me, and that's a real kind of marker down on the window for me, was not having strength and depth in the centre-back positions. They made late moves. They tried to get Lloyd Kelly from Bournemouth. That didn't happen. Bournemouth at the end just didn't want to let him go. Trevor Chalobah as well at Chelsea. They had a little go. But there's always a random Chelsea attempt. Spurs always tried to raid Chelsea for someone at the end of a deadline day for some reason. That didn't work at all. Absolutely did not. Chelsea again didn't want to let him go. Same with the kind of Conor Gallagher situation with Højbjerg not going. That didn't work out at all. And obviously Spurs struggling to get Dyer or Sanchez out the door as well towards the end of the window did not help. Sanchez had a fair bit of interest, but there was just nothing that really suited both him and the club at the same time. I know there's been talk of a move to Sanchez to Turkey for Sanchez as well, and I think Højbjerg also linked as well, and I'm sure probably Dyer, on Dembele, Lloris, they'll all be linked with Turkey. I haven't heard anything on that personally. I don't really know which way to take that. There's often reports from Turkey that say, done deal, all agreed. And I will talk to people in and around the club or even the player involved or anyone, and they'll go, huh? I've never really heard of that. So I do think sometimes, and it happens in all countries, it happens in our country as well, but certainly there's sometimes with Spurs and Turkish media reporting of very, very speculative stuff is put forward as fact. And again, I must stress in this case, that's not to say it isn't true about Sanchez. I honestly, I have not heard anything either way. Only thing I've heard back from people is they would be quite surprised by it because it doesn't really make much sense at this point, purely because Sanchez is the one of the remaining centre-backs who does fit Postecoglou's system. And I think other than the odd little kind of moment, I think he's looked quite comfortable within the setup as well. So I would be surprised if they were to let him go at this point without a replacement able to be brought in. You know, you're then having to deal with Dyer on the right and then hoping essentially that a combination of, I guess, Ben Davies and Ashley Phillips can cover the other role. It's a big ask all the way till January with a lot of games to kind of come in since in between. But yeah, I was... we'll see. We'll see what happens. The only reason I can see for it happening is if Spurs think, well, he's leaving in 9 months' time. Here's a chance to get some money for him. I don't know. But certainly I haven't heard anything on that at this point. By the time this video goes out, it may have been confirmed and him holding up a... Was it Galatasaray? I'm trying to remember who it was now. It was certainly a Turkish link. So yeah, that's a defence. That's the big area for me where I feel they didn't do enough. They brought in 2 centre-backs, but one of them, of course, is a very young one. Who knows? He could break through this season, Ashley Phillips. He could get a chance, absolutely smash it, and end up keeping his place in the team. You know, Mickey van der Ven's 22, Udogie's 20, so Postecoglou clearly has no worry about giving players their chance if he feels that they're ready. And it may end up that they did do the right thing. They brought in the player that ended up becoming a star, but at the moment, I think that's the area for me that could have been done more. Midfield, as I said, Maddison's the game changer. Brilliant signing. One of the best signings of the transfer window for any club for me. For me, he is the heir to Gaza. He is the heir to Ericsson. He's the man who can make Tottenham tick. It's just steering clear of the injuries for me, for him. Because technically, the only alternative for him really is kind of Lo Celso. Lo Celso's a different kind of player. It was unfortunate for him against Fulham. He was one of the brighter ones out of that midfield three from the bits that I saw, but picked up an injury, a quad injury, that saw him have to go off at half-time. He's actually missed Argentina duty as well. But I think he's expected to be hopefully back and ready after the break. So yeah, that's maybe the one area. Maybe we wouldn't have been that adverse to seeing another creative central midfielder come in, but like I said, Lo Celso probably does cover the role enough, just in a different way. And up front in those kind of attacking positions, there's a lot of options now. You've got Son, Richarlison, Kulusevski, Solomon, even Perisic, Brian Hill as well. He's still recovering. He'll be back after the international break. And now, of course, the £47.5 million Brennan Johnson. I don't think there's any add-ons. It's a very unusual deal. I think it's all in the fee, 47.5. I don't think there's any more to come. Whether that's a financial fair play thing for Forest, I don't know. It benefited them. But, you heard me say before, Postecoglou really wanted Brennan Johnson, was his main attacking target for the end of the window. Spurs were just kind of looking to see whether the price would come down or not. It did ever so slightly, but eventually they got him. And I asked Postecoglou yesterday. I got a good old run. I asked 4 out of the 5 presser questions after the match yesterday, and one of them was, "Why did you want to bring Brennan Johnson to the club?" And he said, "Just another exciting young player. He's a real threat in the front third, and he's a bit different to what we've already got. He's young, ambitious. It's no secret that that's been the model for me, not just here, but wherever I've gone. It's just as much about the person you're bringing in as the footballer. Looking at him, he's going to fit in really well with this group because he's really ambitious and hungry, and he wants to take his game to another level. The technical and the physical attributes he has, I think he should fit in really well with us." Interesting, Forest put out a really nice video after he'd moved, and that actually was a better selling point for any Spurs fans who might doubt whether Brennan Johnson's going to be good for Spurs than anything Spurs did. Honestly, look at it back. It just shows all the terrific kind of highlights and what a person he is as well. And actually, Steve Cooper paid a really nice tribute to him afterwards as well. He said, whilst we're obviously going to miss Brennan and the memories he's given so many of us when he's lit up the City ground on the right wing, we're extremely proud of him. And we're pleased that he's got this move as he enters the next stage in his career. Everyone knows how great he is on the pitch, but what many people don't see is the kind, humble and genuine young man he is off of it. He's always learning, always showed great humility and has a superb nature in the way he interacted with his teammates and staff. All credit must go to his family, especially his mum and dad, Alison and David, who should be so proud of the incredible young man they've raised. He'll be missed by everyone, but he will always be a Red. Spurs fans will be hoping he's maybe more of a lily white now. But Johnson, honestly, you've heard me talk about Johnson in the last video. I really think he's going to be superb. And my prediction I made yesterday to Guesty, I think he's going to score in his debut. I do. I think we're going to see a debut goal. He's got lightning pace. He is a guy that I watched him in his Spurs interviews talking about how he's been trying to kind of learn, take as much as he can from Gareth Bale in the national squad as well. He reminds me a little bit in some of his play of aspects of a young Dele Alli. Not exactly the same, but little aspects of the way he plays as well. And there's so much that he can learn from Postecoglou. There's so much he can learn from, Sonny as well. And also elements of Kulusevski's game, I feel. Kulusevski was okay yesterday. He's got so many moments where he can beat a man. I just felt maybe he didn't do enough with the final ball yesterday. But yeah, he's adapting to what Postecoglou wants from him. But I think Johnson will give him a lot of competition. Solomon, I think, playing well and getting 2 assists makes it really interesting as well, because Johnson can play anywhere in that front three. He can play on the right predominantly, but he can also play on the left, and he can also play through the centre. He can also play as a support striker as well. So I'm intrigued to see kind of, for that first game back after the break, exactly how that shakes up and who lines up for that game against Sheffield United. It's because you could play Solomon, Johnson and Son. You could play Johnson, Son and Kulusevski if you wanted. That's the beauty of his versatility, Johnson, that he's going to be a threat from everywhere. And don't forget, with the chances being created for him, I think I would imagine we'll definitely see double figures from Johnson. I'm all in on Johnson. You can probably tell. I am not on the who kind of thing. Is Johnson, but what is it? What was that thing that guy used to say about Harry Kane, the Arsenal fan? Whose name is Harry Kane or something? I can't remember. But whose name is Brendan Johnson? Honestly, yeah, it's a big fee. But yes, the market, I think, dictated that. And he may be an underwhelming name right now. But I will always say this about Spurs. So when I say underwhelming, he'll be underwhelming to some people who wanted a big statement signing after Kane. But what I'll always say about Spurs is the best, most successful players that Spurs have always brought in over the years have been the ones that weren't high-profile, big, expensive signings. The big, high-profile, expensive signings have been the ones that haven't done so well. So that's not to say that would be the case every single time, but it's also maybe just a reason not to write off people before they've even started. That's what I would say. Yeah, he'll love working with Postecoglou, and likewise. And there's also, of course, mustn't forget Alejo Velis. Honestly, I could probably get asked about him more than any other player, because I just think people kind of didn't see. He told us out in Barcelona, the quotes, I put them out there. Postecoglou said, Velis will not get any game time, he thinks, until the second half of the season. He needs to adjust, he needs to adapt, he needs to get used to a very different lifestyle, culture, game, football system, whatever you want to call it, everything. So he will not. He does have his work permit. The amount of people I see on Twitter saying, well, he hasn't got his work permit yet, that's why he's not taking part. No, he got his work permit the day after he signed, along with Mickey van der Ven. They both got them. He has been training with the first team. He has been involved. Who knows? He may suddenly develop very quickly, and maybe what Postecoglou said won't be the case. He may come in a little bit earlier. Who knows? But at this moment in time, The plan is to progress him a little bit slower and second half of the season bring him into things. Essentially, Postecoglou's side project, working on him. But yeah, no one seems to everyone seems to be wondering like what the hell's happened to Villiers. But yeah, so looking at transfer window, Spurs signed 5 new senior players, 2 players for the future, and they will obviously also say that they made the loans of Kulusevski and Porro permanent. I'm never sure how to take those kind of things, the making the loan moves permanent thing, because there's different elements to that. I know and I understand some people will say, yeah, but that's been budgeted from a previous window. I don't know financially whether it works like that in terms of the spreadsheets and all that sort of boring stuff. But yeah, if you take them out of it, then you're looking at a net spend of, I don't know, what is it, 30, 40 million? If you're adding them in, then you're looking at a net spend of 100 million or something. It's all very different. But I completely understand when people do not want to include those two because they're previous players. My view on the transfer window as a whole, did Spurs do enough for Postecoglou? No, not at all. I don't think they did. Was it a start? Absolutely. I do think it was a start. I don't think it was a poor transfer window. I would probably give it a 6 out of 10. I would say enough changes were made that we have seen at this different Tottenham Hotspur. Were enough made to give him the strong squad he requires? No, I don't think so, personally. I think while Postecoglou's got a very clear idea of what he wants, and he's driven a lot of the recruitment this summer, all the recruitment, really, he kind of did acknowledge on Friday that having a director of football in place would have helped. And he said that that's coming along soon. We'll see who that's going to be. And do you know what? I don't even have to say about the transfer window whether it was a success or not. I asked Postecoglou straight off. I said, you told me that you wanted another centre-back. Are you happy with what you ended up with? Sorry. Did you feel that enough was done in the transfer window? I think was the way I put it. Could have been more. He said, when you go through these things, you always understand that there are so many moving parts that I think you rarely come out of it with an ideal picture. But that doesn't mean it isn't a picture that can still work. We've still done a fair bit in a short space of time. When you look at the team we've got now, we've virtually changed half the starting lineup. The way we play, the way we train, totally new coaching staff and training. It was never going to be a one window. It was never going to be one window, this rebuild. Where we sit at the moment, I'm really happy with the players we've brought in. So the words in there, you can see it really, is that he is, it's not ideal. That's the word he used. But it was a start. And that's probably where I'm at as well. It wasn't ideal. There could have been more done. I don't think Spurs moved quickly enough for certain players. They got a lot of their core business done earlier on, of course. But I do think the centre-back issue, getting another one in, they're just too reliant on players like Davinson Sanchez and Eric Dyer having to go. That obviously won't be the case next summer. But it's just ridiculous that they've allowed themselves to get into this situation summer after summer. But there you go. Now we have to see exactly who he leaves out. That's the next question, because as the squad numbers are, he has 2 foreign players he's going to have to leave out. He's got 19 non-locally trained players. He can only have 17. As I said, Hugo Lloris appears to be one. For people that are wondering, you've got to register your squad on 13th of September. I think it's a Wednesday, second week of the international break. The reason for it being not the day after transfer window closes, I think, is to do with the international break. And just in case there were any serious injuries on the international break, that gives clubs a little bit of time to kind of adapt to that. And obviously also we'll probably take into account the fact that the Turkish and the Saudi windows, among others, are still open. So Lloris not being one, then that leaves, I'd imagine at this moment in time, if no one else leaves, maybe Tongi is the other one, which would maybe suggest he would have to go to somewhere like Turkey to get some game time, even if it's for 6 months until or not even 6 months, is it? 4 months until the window opens again in January. Obviously, if Davinson Sanchez were to go or Eric Dyer were to go somewhere at late notice, that would free up the space and Tongi would be able to be registered. If it was down between Dyer and Tongi for me, you know how much I love Tongi's ability. But what I would say is Dyer probably provides you with more versatility in your squad, in that technically you could play him as a number 6. He's not an ideal Postecoglou 6 by any stretch of the imagination, but his versatility, I guess, means he can play in a few positions, maybe even at right back if required. If he were to stay, we don't know exactly what's going to happen there. Still, it's a bit of an unknown with these windows still being open. So yeah, looking back on the window, Spurs lost their star player. Didn't quite do enough in the window for me, but they did make a start on things. And I think it's difficult to disagree that right now the rebuild has created a stronger team as a unit. I think that's the case so far. It will be tested by, the lack of depth, I feel. They're going to be very much reliant on the, how do I put this? I guess the fixture gods, the injury gods, whatever you want to call it. Because right now, not having the Carabao Cup, that's not a positive. I'm not saying it's a good thing like the Carabao Cup, but obviously it will create freer midweeks as well as the lack of European football. So maybe the lack of game time will put less stress on these players and you may see less injuries. It doesn't always work out like that, but you may see. So maybe they might get away with it until January and they can maybe try and make a couple of more kind of additions to the rebuild. But look, let's be honest. The feel-good factor is back around the club. That's massive. It's entirely down to a certain, well, let's be honest. The biggest signing Spurs have made in recent months is Angelos Postecoglou. I think it is. It has to be. He, for me, is the biggest arrival at Tottenham Hotspur for some time. Despite the CVs of those who have come before him, honestly. I think the most exciting thing as well is that it feels like we're just beginning. Everything's just at the start. It's all now moving on from this point. These are the early days and they're really exciting. As he said, there's going to be bumps on the road. There's going to be the odd game, I think, they may get a tonking when it just doesn't go right for them and they kept getting caught on the break maybe. But right now, it's heading in the right direction. That's something we haven't been able to say for a long time. And I'm loving the football. It's a joy to watch it. I said it in a tweet the other day. It's lovely not to wish the final whistle would come. You actually want games to go on longer so you can see more goals or more attacking, exciting football. Obviously, we're in the international break, which is where football goes to die. You know how much I dislike the international break. I'll probably do a loan roundup. I was thinking about doing one today, but I think there's a few players that might play today. So I'll do one maybe either in midweek or at the weekend, as well as mopping up other bits and pieces with maybe potential departures still. They've got to go. A couple of players have to go, otherwise they're just going to sit there doing nothing. And probably, I think we'll do a Q&A. So get your questions into the comments below. We'll do a Q&A probably at the weekend, next weekend. Anything you want to ask, obviously about football and Spurs, but I know people like to chuck in the odd movie question, things like that, because they know I like my movies. But yeah, we'll do one of those next week. I think that's everything. I think that's everything we could have covered right now. I'm sorry if there's not. But I think it's an hour and a half. It's another movie length one. So I'm going to head off now to enjoy the rest of my Sunday. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.